The tale you're about to read begins innocently enough, but don't let its pastel-colored surface deceive you. The new generation of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, has captivated audiences far and wide, becoming an overnight sensation. Whether you're a fan or not, it's impossible to deny the peculiar charm of its success. But as with many things that glitter, a shadow lurks beneath. Lauren Faust, the mind behind the reboot, is no stranger to acclaim. She's worked on beloved shows and even conceptualized her own toy line, the Galaxy Girls. So why, one must ask, did she abandon those promising ventures to revive a relic of 1980s consumerism? Perhaps nostalgia guided her, a yearning for the toys of her youth. Or perhaps something darker pulled her in. I stumbled across a story years ago that I had almost forgotten until I watched a few episodes of My Little Pony. Something about the characters felt eerily familiar, like echoes from a tragedy I'd read about. The story was of 6 girls, all from the same school, who met untimely deaths on the same day, November 7th, 2004. I searched for the article again but found nothing. The local paper had vanished, or perhaps my memory betrayed me. Desperate, I reached out to an old friend, a fellow gamer from my World of Warcraft days, who had once sent me the article. By some twist of fate, he still had the files saved. And there it was, the connection. The 6 girls who died that day were more than reminiscent of the 6 colorful ponies. They were, in many ways, identical. The first girl, Samantha Gales, was painfully shy, her life marred by the cruelty of those closest to her. Her mother, pregnant at 15, resented Samantha from birth, blaming her for a ruined youth. Her stepfather was worse, locking her in the basement for days at a time. Samantha found solace in animals, her only true companions, until her family forced her to abandon even them. Her classmates teased her mercilessly for her shabby clothes and withdrawn demeanor. One day, the quiet torment proved too much. She ended her life with a handful of Valium pills. Samantha's spirit lives on in Fluttershy. Then there was Denise Walters, the perfect girl on the surface. Rich, beautiful, and brilliant, she was the envy of her peers. But her picture-perfect life was a fragile mask. Her parents were cold, their marriage a hollow arrangement of appearances and debt. Denise dreamed of escaping to Paris to pursue fashion, but her family demanded she stay, marry well, and maintain their crumbling facade. Her obsession with maintaining their illusion of wealth birthed her talent for design. One fateful car ride ended it all. An argument between her parents spiraled out of control, and the crash killed her instantly. Look closely at Rarity and you'll see Denise's tragic glow. Alexandra Matthews was the golden athlete, driven by a desire to please a father who always wanted a son. She poured everything into sports, excelling beyond expectations. But her ambition masked a darker truth. When her mother miraculously gave birth to a boy, Alex was cast into the shadows. Determined to prove her worth, she pushed herself harder too hard. Steroids became her silent partner, oblivious to the strain they placed on her fragile heart. At 17, she collapsed on the track, her dreams shattering as she succumbed days later. Her fiery will echoes in Rainbow Dash. Jamie Sanders was the backbone of her struggling farm family. The weight of responsibility bore down on her, leaving no room for childhood joys. With too many mouths to feed and too few dollars, Jamie worked tirelessly, often skipping meals so her siblings wouldn't have to. Her pride mirrored her family's refusal to accept help, even from a well-off aunt. Her death remains unclear in the records, but whispers suggest exhaustion played a cruel hand. Jamie's strength and sacrifice live on in Applejack. These are only 4 of the 6 girls. The remaining 2 fragments of joy and chaos linger in the shadows, waiting to reveal their truths. But ask yourself this: coincidence or something more? The lines between fiction and reality blur, their pastel smiles stained with the weight of lives cut short. The next time you watch My Little Pony, remember this story. and wonder, who else might have whispered their pain into the bright, cheerful characters you see? Her father's death in 2001 was just the beginning of Jamie's nightmare. The heart attack came without warning, and her mother, unable to bear the weight of caring for so many children, followed suit not long after taking her own life in despair. The children were left in the care of their grandmother, whose mind had long since dulled with age, leaving her incapable of offering more than the barest of attention. Jamie, desperate to keep the family afloat, worked tirelessly, helping neighbors with yard work, her hands calloused from the labor, her spirit crushed beneath the weight of responsibility. But fate would not be kind. One day, she fell into the wood chipper, her life reduced to a horrible, tragic accident. In her final moments, perhaps, she wondered if it would have been easier to simply let go. The echoes of Applejack's strength and sacrifice, now twisted by death's cruel hand. Then there is the story of Katherine Jackson, the inspiration for Pinkie Pie, a tale drenched in sorrow. Katherine was a foster child, bouncing from one home to the next, her life a collection of broken promises. Her earliest memories are haunted by the violent death of her mother, murdered by her father in a blind fit of rage when Katherine was just 5. Her father, after committing the atrocity, took his own life, leaving her to wander through a world of unkind homes, where the promise of adoption was often just a lie for financial gain. The families who took her in refused to care for her, no food, no clothing, no love. Even when she found a semblance of peace in a home with a kind family, the ghosts of her past would not let her rest. The memories of her mother's screams, her father's furious rage, chasing her down with twisted words, made her fragile mind shatter piece by piece. Nightmares tormented her, and as she grew older, the voices became more real. They whispered in her ear, pulled at her mind, dragging her deeper into madness. By high school, she had snapped entirely. Her behavior was dismissed as hyperactive antics by her classmates and teachers, but they didn't see the truth, the voices, the hallucinations, the creeping descent into insanity. She painted pictures of horrors and dressed in garish, over-the-top clothes, her mind unraveling with every brushstroke, every moment. One day, one of the voices told her she could fly. Believing it, she jumped from a building. Her fragile body shattered upon the cold ground below. Pinkie Pie was born from the shadows of Katherine's tragic life, a grotesque mockery of innocence, a playful mask hiding a heart full of despair. What makes the story even more disturbing is that Lauren Faust originally designed Pinkie Pie as a Pegasus, just as Katherine had once believed she could soar. Lastly, there was Cynthia Little, the inspiration for Twilight Sparkle. An overachiever from a young age, Cynthia was relentlessly pushed to meet impossible standards. Her parents demanded perfection, her every move scrutinized, every failure a personal affront to the family's pride. The pressure built until it cracked something inside her, the weight of expectation too much to bear. Cynthia was brilliant, yes, but she was also a child, lost in a world that asked too much of her. And when the burden finally became too heavy, it wasn't the grades or the expectations that crushed her, but something darker, lurking in the shadows of her mind. Her older brother was always the golden child, his academic and athletic achievements lauded at every turn. And she, the younger sister, was held to the same impossible standards. She neglected every other part of her life, obsessing over her grades in an attempt to prove her worth. For a while, it worked. Her parents, proud of their genius children, would boast to their friends about not one, but 2 brilliant kids. But the facade began to crack when a local private academy, known for grooming the brightest minds, took an interest in her. Among several other advanced students, she was considered a potential candidate. She saw this as the ultimate opportunity to cement her place as the perfect child in her parents' eyes. The pressure was suffocating. She knew there were only a handful of spots for new students. She knew the application would include both a rigorous test and an essay, 2 hurdles she couldn't afford to fail. So she became desperate. Her studying consumed her, to the point where food and sleep became foreign concepts. As the test date drew nearer, panic set in. In her frantic desperation, she resorted to darker measures. She found an essay online and copied it, believing no one would catch her. During the test, she cheated, feverishly glancing at others' answers. But her plan unraveled. She was caught. Her parents' reaction was swift and cruel horror and disgust. In that moment, the image of their perfect daughter shattered, leaving her drowning in shame. The weight of her failure crushed her. Unable to face the disgrace, she chose to end it all. She hung herself in her bedroom, her body swaying gently in the quiet room, an irreversible escape from a world she could no longer bear. You might wonder then, how someone like Lauren Faust could be inspired to create a children's show from such a bleak and tragic story. How could she take inspiration from so much suffering? Perhaps in some twisted way, she felt a need to give these lost souls the closure they never had. Or maybe, just maybe, she wanted to tell their stories, their true stories, in a way that could heal the wounds they never had the chance to mend. Think about it. In the show, Fluttershy is a caretaker of animals, surrounded by creatures who adore her. Rarity becomes a successful designer, adored by loving parents. Rainbow Dash is a celebrated athlete, her dreams realized. Applejack thrives on a prosperous farm, surrounded by a family that values her. Pinkie Pie, the embodiment of happiness, dances through life carefree. And Twilight sparkles. She too is accepted into an exclusive school, achieving the academic success she so desperately craved. Perhaps Faust's intention was to give these spirits what they had always wanted, the chance to be perfect, to succeed, to be loved and admired, to live the lives they could never have in the real world. And I think in some eerie way, they are happy.